Hello, and welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jennifer Chambers. You know that I'm passionate about uncovering the truth. Here, we're taking that passion to the dark heart of the Pacific Northwest. As a true crime and historical writer, I've spent years immersed in the chilling archives of this region. Each week, we'll explore cases, both ancient and modern, of murder, unexplained events, strange places, and those who have simply vanished. We'll dig into the research, connecting the dots between past and present, revealing the threads of mystery that weave through our incredible, yet often unsettling, landscape. Prepare to be captivated as we discover that while times may change, the darkest aspects of human nature remain hauntingly the same.
It's a cold, dark night. January 2006. A young man left his apartment in Bremerton, Washington. He locked the door. He left a note. And he walked out into the dark. His car would be found days later. It was abandoned, damaged, and empty, near a remote forest road. But the man who drove the car, Joe Pichler, was gone. There were no witnesses, there were no confirmed sightings, and there were no remains. Joe wasn't a stranger to the spotlight. As a child, millions of people, probably you, knew his face. He was in family films, he was in comedies, and Saturday afternoon reruns. But when he disappeared at 18 years old, his name quietly faded from the headlines. So today we're asking a question that still doesn't have an answer. What happened to Joe Pichler? And later in this episode, we'll talk about what it means to grow up famous and then grow up without it. This is Same Crime, Different Time. I'm your host, Jen Chambers. Part 1. Who was Joe Pichler? Joseph Taylor Pichler was born January 14th, 1986, in Bremerton, Washington. He spent part of his childhood in the Pacific Northwest, including time in Oregon, before his acting career took off. Now, Joe began acting young. He was probably 6, I think, by the time he was appearing in films alongside major Hollywood names. You might remember him from the movies Beethoven. This is in the 90s. Beethoven Second, Varsity Blues, or A Simple Wish. I definitely remember him. I loved Varsity Blues. I don't think I ever saw Beethoven. It might have been my time, just my age. But I totally can remember his face. And if you look him up, you'll definitely recognize him. He was the funny guy. He was the earnest, nice kid, approachable, expressive. He was natural on camera. And by all accounts, Joe was smart and creative. He enjoyed writing and filmmaking, and he also had ambitions behind the camera. But as he got a little older and childhood roles kind of slowed down, so did his work. So like many former child actors, Joe entered adulthood at sort of a crossroads with a very public past and a very private uncertainty about the future. Part 2. The night Joe disappeared. Joe Pichler was 18 years old when he disappeared. On the night of January 5th, 2006, Joe left his apartment in Bremerton. He had recently returned home to Bremerton after struggling to find steady acting work in Los Angeles. There was no sign of him. Inside of his apartment, investigators found something that was very unsettling. There was a handwritten note. The note expressed sadness and discouragement and referenced his lack of success in Hollywood currently. It was interpreted by the authorities as maybe being a suicide note, but it didn't include a goodbye to family or friends. And Joe left behind his personal belongings. There wasn't any evidence. They never found forced entry or evidence of a struggle, or that he was packing for a trip. He didn't give away his belongings, the way that happens often when people try and commit suicide or successfully do that. Joe drove away in his silver Toyota Corolla. And then, nothing. Part 3. The car in the woods. 8 days later, 8 long days that his family was worried the whole time, on January 13th, 2006, Joe's car was discovered. It was in a remote area that was near Lake Crescent Road that's close to Olympic National Park. Now, Olympic National Park is enormous. The vehicle had been abandoned. It did show scrapes and dents, and the officers thought that maybe the car had been driven recklessly, or he could have even struck something. And inside there were no clear signs of what had happened after that. Joe wasn't nearby. There weren't any tracks leading into the woods. There wasn't any blood. There was no evidence of foul play. And despite searches, many searches of the surrounding forest, they've never found his body. Part 4, the investigation and theories. Authorities initially leaned towards the idea that he had committed suicide, based mostly on the note, but also his emotional state at the time, his questioning. There wasn't any suggestion that he was super depressed or that he had been showing suicidal ideation from friends and family. And the position of his car close to the dense wilderness kind of supported the idea of suicide, however. Like maybe he just walked off and never came back. But Joe's family has long raised questions. Why was the car left so far away from a trail? Why wasn't there any physical evidence? And why hasn't any trace of Joe ever been found, despite many searches? Some other theories have circulated over the years. The first was accidental death, followed by maybe being disoriented in Olympic National Park, in the wilderness there. The second is foul play, though they haven't ever identified publicly any suspects for that. And then intentional disappearance, like running away to create a new life, which his family members say is absolutely not possible. So Joe's case remains officially open still, but very cold. No arrests, no remains, and no definitive answers. Part 5, Child Actors and Pressure. This is kind of what happens when the spotlight goes dark. And this is based on research generally about child actors. I'll have my sources listed. Because Joe Pichler's story exists within a broader truth about child actors. We don't really sit with these things long enough. We don't look at them. Child actors grow up in public, right? They're praised early and often. But once they grow out of the physical attributes that those child actors are known for, they're forgotten. Psychologists and industry advocates have long documented the unique pressures facing former child performers. And you can look back to, Judy Garland. She's a very famous example. There's Shirley Temple. There's tons of them. But these pressures are common to a lot of them. And the first is identity that's built around external validation. Like everybody tells you you're great, and then they stop telling you. And then there's this loss of structure and praise. And of course, financial instability. I mean, the very nature of being an actor is not exactly always stable. And there's a huge lack of mental health support. There's difficulty transitioning to adult roles or careers. So then when the work stops, many of these young actors experience grief, not just for their lost jobs, but for their lost versions of themselves where they knew what to do and people knew what was expected of them. I mean, none of this is specific to Joe particularly. It doesn't explain his disappearance, but it does kind of give a little context for the emotional terrain that he might have been navigating. And it's interesting. I think the same could be said for a lot of people who grow up within the public spotlight, children or not. I think of reality TV stars, for instance. You know, they're known for a very certain thing, and then once they stop, what are they? I mean, context is not causation, and understanding it is not blame, but it is interesting. And it's something that I think that society should do a whole lot more. I do know, I've read that the Screen Actors Guild is doing a lot more to try and support child actors. So I hope that continues. It's interesting. It's kind of like watching football. It's one of those things that you consume knowing that there's risks involved for everyone who's participating in it. And you assume that all good practices are being taken, but you never know. Part 6, the family and the weight. Tragically, for Joe's family, time has not brought closure. It's only brought silence. Years and years have passed. Searches have slowed, and headlines, of course, moved on. But families of the missing don't move on, they wait. Now, Joe Pichler would be in his late 30s today. There has never been a confirmed sighting. There's never been a body to bury either. And there's never been a final answer for his family. Joe Pichler's disappearance reminds us how thin the line can be between public success and private struggle. Maybe it was self-harm that got him. Maybe he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was at age 18 still at an age that's trafficked quite a bit, and it wasn't as public, but it definitely happened then. So that could be the answer too. And it also reminds us that fame doesn't protect anybody from loneliness, or it doesn't shield anybody from being, filled with despair about what's happening next. And also, some of these stories, unfortunately, just don't have answers. They have absence. If you or someone you love is struggling, help is available. I will put in the show notes. There are national hotlines if you or someone you love are having suicidal ideation. You are not invisible. And if you have information about Joe Pichler's disappearance, please contact local authorities. You can contact your local authorities, and they will contact the appropriate people. I'm Jen Chambers, and this has been Same Crime, Different Time. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening today. Please review and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out the show. And please leave us a voicemail at the Spotify link. Also, you can always feel free to send us an email at scdtmail@gmail.com or www.jennifer-chambers.com.